Well, thanks for joining me again today.
My pleasure. No, I'm glad to be back.
For sure. And for the listeners at home that didn't hear my first conversation with Chris, I would highly recommend you going back. I think it was early spring that I had you on. And Chris has a phenomenal story and motivational, really, story. You hear Chris's story, and I think you really don't have any excuses to not get out and get off the couch and get into shape once you hear Chris's story. So, but I do thank you for joining me again today. And we're going to, I think, Chris, I have my podcast. It's more for me and some kind of therapy. So you don't know this, but you're going to be my therapist today.
Perfect.
Because here's my struggle.
I got my therapy behind me. So
there it is. Yes, I see that. Scotch. You're a Scotch man, aren't you?
Big Scotch guy.
Yeah.
Big whiskey guy in general. But yeah.
So, okay. So my struggle over the last little while has started to become sports and, kids sports, youth sports. And there's many different avenues we could head down as to the therapy that I need today. But the first right out the gate is just the sheer expense that sports is starting to take us down as parents, as families. And, just you look at the amount of money, you spend on an average tournament weekend for one team, Chris. And, the recent thought that I've had is what if all that money could be generated back into the community complexes and training facilities and all that stuff? Because, one team goes away, the whole team could end up spending, let's just throw out a number and say 20 grand on one weekend. It could even be higher, right?
Yeah.
Well, you start flipping that money around and putting that back into the community, into the sports facilities, the arenas, and all those things. And man, you could have a pretty wicked program. But so even this summer, my girls were both in ball, and each weekend that they would go away, it would be close to $1,000 per kid per weekend, right? You got hotels, food, tournament expenses, and all that stuff. And we're spending, I'm griping a little bit here right out the gate, Chris. We're spending so much money on kids. And I guess what I would love for you to do today is call us back to, good businesses, organizations. They always talk about the vision, the purpose. But in your opinion, what is the purpose of kids and youth sports?
My opinion on kids and youth sport is, obviously keeping them active.
Yeah.
But, B, they create that community, and you're creating life lessons for a lot of these kids, right? And for them to go out and learn how to be a teammate, learn how to be a good person, sort of at the end of the day, that is, it is what it all really encompasses is, that is my idea behind youth sports. And I'm not going to say it's straight away from that, but, in a sense, it has, it's the whole system as itself, and as you just say, has become a business opposed to doing what's right for the kids now. That's not happening anymore. And it's just, it's been a very wild switch since I was a kid. When it was an easy thing for you to get your kids in grassroots sports. And they didn't have those costs associated with it. It wasn't all about what tournaments you're going to, all about how many games you're playing, all of this stuff. It was getting kids out there and allowing them to be kids and giving them those life lessons. And at the end of the day, getting them active.
Right. Do you feel that we are programming kids so much that it's taking the love of the game away from the kids? Or maybe not even
100.
taking away, not even showing them the love of the game.
100%. I think that's our largest issue right now within youth sports. I think the way that the direction of it all is going is you start removing the passion from these kids. And we see it all the time. I see it all the time as a hockey coach. And it's across the board. Like these sports are designed to be fun for kids. They're not designed at 7 or 8 years old to be saying you're going to be going to the NHL or MLB or, whatever it is. And they've really started to imprint that in these kids' minds. And sadly, I have to put a lot of the onus on it on parents in that perspective of it, because returning to what the original question was, the cost in sports, because things have escalated so far, parents are putting in very, very large amounts of money to have their kids play a sport that should just be grassroots and fun.
Mm-hmm.
And we've lost the middle ground, in my opinion. The grassroots side of things has really disappeared, and you're either playing, once a week, or you're playing 6 times a week.
Right.
And that's a big issue.
Yeah, like for my kids, I think it's a little bit different with hockey, but it still doesn't happen as much. And I guess it really depends on the area you live in. And I guess even living in this climate here right now where outdoor rinks are very difficult. But let's take, for example, my 13-year-old daughter. If she was to get on the phone this afternoon and phone all of her friends that she played ball with and say, hey, do you guys just want to meet out at the Diamond and play ball? I think the kids would be lost. They'd be like who's going to be coaching, let's just go play a game in ourselves, right? And and that's what we did when we were growing up. The summertime, that was all we played ball all summer long. Like we were out at the playground playing ball, and we loved the game. Like even hockey, right? As soon as you get home from school, it wasn't the programmed organized sports that we were doing. We're out of the rink, we were skating. Us being both from Saskatchewan, we could skate till from October till May outdoors.
Sometimes July,
Yeah, I'm joking, but I think that's just what's kind of sad to me right now is just it feels like we are teaching a trade. We're not teaching the passion and the love of the game anymore. I feel that sometimes it becomes more about the parents than it is about the kids really enjoying the sport.
And no, you really hit the nail on the head there. Like that's one of those things where it has just become a business model. And I think there's obviously other variables involved in it. Being our age and growing up in Saskatchewan, you talked about this stuff at school, you figured it out, or you jumped on your bike in the summertime and you drove to somebody's house and you sort of got things going that way. Where nowadays with social media and your ability to connect, I'm not going to say you were forced to it back then, but it was that, not that it was the only option, but it was your option to get out and play with your friends.
Yeah.
Where nowadays I just feel, kids have so many other distractions, and that plays a large role in it. I mean, I can't remember the last time I drove anywhere in Okotoks and saw a street hockey game going on.
Yeah.
It's one of these things that just, it doesn't exist anymore. And then, the other part of it is it's so much based around the parents, and it's based around that professional business model where, in my opinion, when I grew up, I was lucky if I got on an actual structured practice was maybe twice a week.
Right.
And that's not the case anymore. The kids nowadays, it's the more ice time, the better. And that sucks that passion out of the game. It sucks the imagination out of the game, because everything is structured and they don't have that ability to go out there and just play a pickup hockey game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you even go to Stick and Puck here in Okotoks, and the kids even just trying to organize a simple, let's play a game of shinny. It's just a giant cluster for them to try and do that, because it's never ever offered to them anymore.
Right.
With facilities being such a commodity, and just that lack of, I'm not even going to say it's want. I think it's just they're exhausted. From going from school to hockey to everything else, the travel is more, there's more, it's just, it is, there's more involved with the kids now than anything we ever dealt with. And a lot of it I don't agree with, but it's very, like, as you mentioned, very parent driven.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's really unfortunate, because if you could, in an ideal world, drop the kids off, and parents never have a say. I understand that there's
dream world, Carla.
There's a time and a place that a parent needs to say something or whatever, but Okay, so here's the question for you. When it comes to youth sports, I guess depending on how high you go, but is there a certain age that you would say that sports should be fair play? Like
Fair play. And
where everybody gets the same amount of ice time or field time or whatever. Like at what point should that stop? And then it becomes like, I guess, Chris, I guess here's the question. Is it about winning or is it about developing kids?
it's about developing kids at the end of the day. But unfortunately, it's about winning has just taken that over.
Mm-hmm.
And parents, and it's very parent driven. Parents are the people that are out there, they have their ability now to voice their opinion a lot more than they used to.
Mm-hmm.
And they completely forget that, they want their U9 or U11 kid running a crazy breakout when they can't make a 10-foot pass. Right. And it's been detrimental, I think, as a whole across all sports that way, because you're seeing kids get structured in immediately opposed to learning the fundamentals and being able to excel. And in my personal opinion, everything should be fair play below U11.
Mm.
So U11 and below. I mean, it is one of those things, and I do still believe there are teams that can go out there, because you're always going to have the kids that are good, and there definitely needs to be a little bit of structure that where in that place where if you've got kids that are mastering fundamentals and they're able to do that and they've got their head wrapped around the game. And there's always been that. Even when I played hockey back in the 80s and 90s, that was there.
Mm-hmm.
You always still had that, but I've just found that mentality is now trickled down so far that it's like that across the board. And I mean, very rarely do you find coaches that are just willing to roll lines now and work fundamentals and practices, because they immediately catch flack from some parent on the team that thinks their kid is going to the NHL and he needs to be out there on every power play and penalty kill. And because, at U11, the scouts are in the stands, right? They're there and they're watching. and it just kills me, because you see that. That's what sucks the passion out of the game for the kids, is the parental involvement and the way that they talk about it. And I mean, they bring it home. They're talking about the team at home, whether
Mm-hmm.
that's with, their significant other, whatever it might be. And if it's in a negative context, the kids bring that back to the dressing room. If they're bitching about one kid, that imprints itself on the kid, and then the kid's got that negativity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, from that parental side, it's just become so toxic that it's really made the sport unenjoyable for a lot of kids. And, I'm sure you've seen it all over the place, and I see it all the time. Like, I don't ever remember a time when I was young where I didn't want to go play.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
that passion was there, unless I was sick or, something was legitimately going on. And now you go to some of these practices and the kids are just, that passion's gone. They're making excuses before they even got to leave to practice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just with every excuse under the sun. And to me, that's the passion being gone, because that never occurred at any time in my sporting career. And, we were always excited to get out there because it was fun. We didn't have that toxicity involved in the game yet.
Well, yeah, I think you nailed it right on the head, because I do not remember and I didn't play elite sports growing up, but I never once remember there being issues that, Ryan across the street was getting more ice time than me and blah, blah, blah. And, it was just the way it was. And I guess even, as a kid playing hockey, I knew I wasn't the greatest hockey player, but I also knew my role, that there was going to be times that I was going to be sitting because I wanted to win as a team. Right. And I think that has left, because I do like, it would be interesting to see the statistics as to how many people, obviously you want to give your kid the best chance of making it somewhere, and making it somewhere might be a scholarship, a quarter scholarship to the UFC, right? Like that would be unbelievable if somebody got that inside of any sport. But the chances of that happening are so little that I think you're right. I feel that we have totally lost the whole point of what it's all about. And the parents, I do think that the parents have made it all about them, unfortunately.
I agree, and I can understand from a parental side. I mean, you want your kid to, excel as far as he can,
Yeah.
right? But, on the other end of it, like my mentality around youth sports is that you should be coaching these kids and teaching these kids to be playing soccer, hockey, baseball, whatever it is when they're 40 years old. That should be
Yeah.
the end goal at this age. It shouldn't be you're all making the NHL or you're gonna play junior or you're gonna do this. Like it's insane because the statistics are out there.
Hmm.
The chances of kids, making it pro are even playing major junior in Canada is an incredibly hard thing to do from a statistical standpoint. Yet it's amazing how quickly that just gets washed away.
Hmm.
And again, circling back, like I do think that's just a large part of the business model now is that gets pushed out there a lot more. But yeah, it's funny how easy we can omit a very simple statistic and
Hmm.
forget that these, we're coaching these kids and teaching them in life and that we want them playing that sport when they're 30, 40 years old and having the passion for the game, not quitting the sport at 14, 15 years old because they've just been driven into the ground with practices and tournaments and parents putting pressure on them because as you started off with the cost of the sport,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I do think getting back to it, that is a large piece of that parental pressure is when you're paying, like you said, $1,000 a weekend to go to these tournaments. You expect you want your kid to play the best possible, and I think parents forget that it's it's not about who wins and loses a lot of the times at these tournaments. When
Hmm.
you go back and you talk to any kids that played hockey last year, there might be an odd win or loss, maybe they remember, but they remember the time at the tournament.
Hmm.
They
Yeah.
remember,
Yeah.
whether they're out swimming or, playing catch or playing mini sticks.
Hmm.
I know with my son and daughter, that's what they remember.
Yeah.
It's not, about who won or lost or whatever it was. Like that's obviously still there, but it's that environment that you want to have them to have fun in and that they're going to enjoy and they're going to remember. So I can
Hmm.
tell you right now, I don't remember any of the tournaments that I won or lost as a kid.
Hmm.
As a 40-something-year-old man now, I remember the tournaments where we went out and played mini sticks and we had an
Hmm.
amazing, water slide at the hotel.
Yeah.
And that's what we've gone away from.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I certainly see it. Like, I'm sitting here kind of thinking about, the expenses with I'll full disclosure, my girls' softball or fast pitch ball this year that got very expensive. But then I look at other teams that we were playing against, and we had nowhere near the amount of tournaments that they had. And it's just like, it feels like you just wonder who some of these teams are missing out on being able to play because they simply can't afford to play as well. And that's really sad to me that there's some kids out there that would probably crush it. And, I've even seen kids here in Okotoks where it's just like, yeah, the family made a choice or decision, or there wasn't enough money that they didn't play a certain level of hockey, but they were a brilliant hockey player or softball player or whatever, right? And it's just because I remember back to a conversation that you and I were having one time in the rink, and you were telling me what happens in, I think it was Sweden, in their hockey system, and how it's not, because you even back it up a little bit, even to Russia, like communist Russia, and that they are finding the best players. It's not based on income. It's not based on anything. It's based on sheer ability and no doubt desire to to win and play hockey. And so they're picking teams, back in the day when I was growing up, it was very scary. Russia, you think of what communist Russia was doing, but you just wonder if there was a system that could be in place where there was an equal playing field so that all kids had the same chance of making it somewhere in a sport here in Canada. But it seems like it is. I think we are snuffing out a good percentage of kids based on the sheer costs alone.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, going back to that conversation we have, because I do recall it, that's their development model is completely different over there. And they are a fundamental development model. They're a small area game development model. It's little to no games actually, until they're hitting, 10, 11, 12 years old. And so that initial group, and I mean, it's not just Sweden that's like that. It's Czech, it's Finland, that they use a development model that allows a lot more kids to get on the ice, population wise, but also their ice utilization is much better. Because if you're doing these small area type games, you're not, I think it's absolutely insane here in Canada when you've got a team of 15 kids and you're running a full, a full ice practice. The ice utilization is just crazy. And I mean, there is a place for it sometimes. I don't think there's a place for it at the very young ages, because kids shouldn't be having to learn routes of a breakout when they can't do the fundamentals themselves. But, I look at some of the development models that have been, established over here where you've got 50 kids on the ice and they're all active and they're all playing. And that immediately brings costs down, and that's the kind of model that is being established over in these European countries. And then you look at the results from these models and it's getting very, very hard to deny. You're able to have more kids in the sport, and at the end of the day, it is one of these adages, the cream always rises, right? Obviously, the more kids that you have in the sport to start at a young age, you're going to be able to identify them and they're going to be there. And that absolutely is an issue that occurs here in Canada because everything with hockey is insane. It's from registrations, like you said, to tournaments, to cost of equipment, but there's places that, those can absolutely be mitigated. And, I don't like using, the AMP hockey school as a example, but we sell out every year and your kid's on the ice 3 times a week. He gets a multi-sport component out of it. And it's like $3,000 for the year.
Right.
And that's, you're covered. You're good to go.
Yeah.
And, opposed and the tournaments that we do, because we have a development model that was based on the ones from Europe, the kids play 3-on-3 games. We have our own little tournaments that occur, but they're all based out of the same facility. The kids have a blast. You throw a Marvel theme behind it or a Star Wars theme behind it. And that gives them that memory of, we get Chewbacca to come out and skate with them. Like it's one of those things where these kids develop those memories around it, but we're not just wasting resources in the sense of ice time and those types of things that can absolutely be mitigated, and that helps bring down the cost. I mean, if your kid is skating 3 times a week and it's only 15 kids on the ice and you're paying $250 an hour, that adds up pretty quick over the course of 15 kids having to pay registration fees. That gets mitigated immensely when you start putting 45 kids on the ice.
Right. Yeah, it is such a tough thing to, because you don't want to leave kids behind. But if there's opportunities for other students, I've heard grumblings in the United States lately, and it's just basically social media feeds that I follow where they're trying to somehow level the playing field. I have no idea how you do it. I don't think it's possible. But I do think that there is, because you look at high school sports, you look at school sports where there's a little bit more, there used to be, I hear that's changing as well. There used to be a little bit more of an equal playing field to get onto football teams, basketball teams, those things in schools, right? You wonder, and I'm not, I'm just kind of throwing this out there. I don't think it would work, but even if there was some kind of, some schools are starting to do this. Like I know that OJ had a hockey program for a while. I don't think they do anymore. But just the ability, because you look at the ice times that would be available during the day, the school day, the availability to ice is so much greater. And if there was some kind of connection between the schools and the hockey programs, like it would be unbelievable what could happen in those programs, right?
Oh, and I mean they've been around, and I mean I helped run one out in Black Diamond shortly after my accident, actually, and I mean it was phenomenal. It allowed kids that wouldn't have been able to play hockey to get out and play hockey, and you're utilizing dead ice, which is an amazing thing for those facilities because they, having people in them, even if you're just playing at a very minimal cost to rent the ice, cover your insurance, those types of things, that the schools, and I know with my wife being a teacher, funds being allocated and things like that, have had a amazing impact on what the schools are able to offer in that sense. And even finding people to run these programs is a whole other problem in itself. But
right.
I think that's something that, there definitely could be a better model built out around that so that kids do have that opportunity to go out and play all these different kinds of sports. There's so many facilities, like I said, that just sit dormant during the daytime, and especially in a city like Okotoks, the rec center is just throwing things on their board to say, you can come out and play, and it might be pickup basketball and you're going to see one person out there.
Right.
Yeah. It'd be better off if you were able to bring, a group of kids, and that's part of the curriculum there at school, so that the kids that want to be active can be active. And I mean, this is a whole other, issue in schools, is just with the lack of exercise that a lot of these kids have, and being sitting on the outside of it, watching my wife teach and listen to her talk. Like, I think that is a big part of why kids do end up with more. I'm not going to say it's the cause of a learning disability, but it absolutely amplifies it.
Right.
We're going about the way of, you're going to get a bouncy chair or a twisty chair or fidget spinners or whatever it is, because we don't do phys ed, 3-4 times a week like we used to.
Yes.
And then on top of it, just, this is way circling back to the start of the conversation, their imagination is gone at school. You don't see the pickup games happen, kids playing football, soccer. It's, if it is, it's a very small group where, I mean, our recesses when I was a kid, like, you got out the door as quick as you can and you ran as hard as you could for 15 minutes playing, whether it was soccer, football, or, you played baseball, whatever it was. And that's something that has disappeared from our society as a whole, I would almost say.
Well, in Saskatchewan, you had to do that to stay warm, right?
Or to stay cool, because it was just, there's no middle ground in Saskatchewan.
No,
You're
exactly.
either minus 40 or plus 40.
It's, for sure. Well, you even think if there could be something where school boards think outside the box, because I know that they're always hurting lately for money and finances. If there could be a whole sports program added into school divisions, right, as something that, they would look at taking on a hockey program or things like that. I know some schools are doing that, but I know it's usually a separate business that comes in. But anyways, that's a whole nother conversation. But Chris, before we say goodbye, I would like to, it's a pretty big issue as well. And it's, I guess We certainly appreciate the coach volunteers, and I can imagine, um, well, I can imagine the crap that a lot of those, parent coaches do take from other, little Johnny didn't play, this amount or blah, blah, blah. But it's also trying to find a balancing act where they're not looked upon as, okay, they're favoriting their kid. Like they're coaching because their kids in that sport, right? They're there because of their own kid. They're volunteering their time. But how does a coach and how do parents, I guess before we go, it's a big question, but what's your advice to coaches to trying to keep it fair play so that it's not looked upon as, they're favoring their kid? And ideally, what does the best parent look like for a coach?
I mean, you have to put trust in your coaches, and we're starting to see a resurgence of a lot of the coaches that are coming in that have hockey background,
Yeah.
and they're not armchair hockey coaches. You've got guys that I look at our kids' coaches this year all played D1 hockey. You know,
Yeah.
you don't if you're an armchair hockey coach because you watched 1,000 NHL games, that gives you no right to try and speak over or to criticize somebody that has played the game. And when I look at our team, it was fair play. I think they
Yeah.
did a
Surely
very good
was.
job at that. And when they did want to win, when it came down to those moments, it was something that was discussed. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, when you're getting into playoffs, it's one of those things where, yeah, kids, every kid on the team wants to win.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, there's always circumstances that you're going to have. And I mean, if your kid's out there and he's taken 4 penalties, well, I think there needs to be repercussions for that. You can't have fair play,
Mm-hmm.
across the board. If your kid's out there being lazy, he has to miss a shift.
Yeah.
I think you have to allow coaches to hold kids accountable because
Mm-hmm.
that is part of youth sport. You
Mm-hmm.
don't get to go through your adult life being a lazy sack of crap, but if you're
Yeah.
able to do that all the time, and maybe that's, the status quo at home. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But this is that opportunity for that kid to learn that, hey, actions have consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And these coaches that are doing it, they're not getting paid.
All right.
They are out there, doing the best that they can in some cases because maybe they don't have that hockey background. But like I said, you're starting to see that resurgence in guys wanting to get back into it because they see the state of the system that we're in. And, the parents just need to lay off.
Mm-hmm.
They need to look at it and go, you know what? They're doing what's best for all the kids on the ice. And even if your kid is an absolute stud out there, they're still going to do what works best for everybody. And that's one
Mm-hmm.
of the big issues that occurs is you've got obviously, talent gaps across the board.
Mm-hmm.
But there's ways, even as a parent, if you see that happening and little Johnny is finding the drills too easy, he can find ways to make them more difficult.
Yeah.
And that's the
Yeah.
thing. And a lot of these good coaches will implement something like that. If your kid's out there and he's mastered a mohawk already at U9, well, have him do it, in a different facet or have him come out of that mohawk into a couple more strides, right? Like you can amp up that level of difficulty. And that's one of these things that, from a coach's side, I think needs to be looked at.
Mm-hmm.
You need to find drills with evolution built into them so that you can run a drill, but you can potentially give your kids that are, mastering that skill an added level of difficulty, but it allows every kid to still do the same drill.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
and so there definitely is a gap there. But from a parent standpoint, just sit down, shut up, and enjoy.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you didn't put your name in the hat to coach. And if you didn't put your name in the hat to coach, I feel like you shouldn't have that right to have, any input. You're not the one out
Yeah.
there on the ice. It's very easy to criticize. It's a lot harder to actually
Mm.
get out there and teach these kids. And when the rubber hits the road, that's when it changes. And so from that side, like I said, it's a very harsh way to put it, but
Mm-hmm.
unless you're willing to do that, have trust in the coaches and just don't make their life any harder, because they're
Yeah.
volunteering an immense amount of time. The number of parents now that come and drop their kids off at the rink and don't even stay for practice, and
Mm-hmm.
then they show up to a game and they've got no idea what their kid did the last 3 days, but they
Mm-hmm.
expect them to have equal, or they don't know whether he was a jackass at practice or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
was, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
they come in with little to no context, and it's a big problem, we'll say that much.
Yeah, for sure.
And
Well, like, yeah, in the day and age, like you said, the communication's so much easier. Communication doesn't have to happen on the phone or face to face. Communication on a text message is a lot easier to be harsh as opposed to talking to a coach face to face and getting the things. And yeah, that's, something just back to this last year, something that I appreciate about our coaches this last year is just, yeah, they were very approachable. If you had a problem, you could sit down and you could chat with them, and like, because the thing is sometimes little Johnny may interpret things a little bit differently than what actually happened, right? So little Johnny's
yeah,
coming home and saying this happened, and it didn't happen that way at all. So yeah, yeah, the we all need to have that foundation of respect for the coach, for the fact that they're just volunteering their time and they're spending, not just volunteering, they're probably losing money because they can't be at work as much or whatever, or work's piling up because they're there. But just that appreciation. But yeah, it's certainly a difficult thing. And yeah, like I said, I just feel that we've lost our focus a little bit as to the why. And if we can get back to the why, and sometimes maybe little Johnny's sitting on the bench, not because he's done anything bad, but because he's playing his role, because our team needs to win. And yeah, we're going to put the better players on right now because we want to win this tournament. So little Johnny's actually providing a role by sitting on the bench sometimes as well as a team. And that's sometimes hard to understand, but that is a part of it.
and that's, the thing is, at the end of the day, that's a learning experience, right? And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that will happen in life as they grow older and grow up and get into careers. Is you're not going to be the guy all the time. You're not going to be the guy that
Mm-hmm.
maybe gets given that project or whatever the case is. And the more we can instill in that is that as a team, you do have stronger players, you do have weaker players, but like that skill gap, because it's a sport, is obviously different. But developing a mindset that allows those kids, if, yeah, maybe they're not out there in that last minute, but they should be up and cheering their teammates on and
Mm-hmm.
being an active member of that team, and being part of that, opposed to sitting there and, you know, head down and grumbling and, yeah, I didn't get that. And I think that's one of the big things that has been lost, is we just don't, we are allowing our kids to do that, and then we're reinforcing it by trying to approach the coaches, and we've lost sight of, again, what youth sports is about. And it's about the kids, and it's about teaching them life lessons, and yeah, your kid might have missed a 30-second shift, but that is part of life. And I mean, as you start playing higher levels of hockey, I mean, we were U13 this year. That is something that, that was Pee Wee back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, we had, you did the big tryouts, you did all of these things. And I mean, that starts to become an expected aspect of the game the older you get. And some of these people just don't want to maybe admit or understand that their kid is not the best kid, or that aspect of the game is actually a better way to put it, might not be his forte. If you're out there on a penalty kill and there's 1 minute left and little Johnny doesn't get to go out there because he hasn't won a face-off all game, and you need possession of the puck, we should be teaching our kids that, yes, there's an understanding to that side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
you're doing something for the greater good right now. You're doing it for the team.
Well, I think we've maybe forgotten that the life lesson we could teach our kids through sports is if you want something, if you want more ice time, or if you want to win more face-offs, we got to work on it.
You
We
got to
got to
earn it.
work on it. We got to push. We got to, I always go back to Ryan Smith of the Edmonton Oilers and the passion, like not the most skilled hockey player in the world, or even like Darcy Tuckers. Those are guys that kind of come to my mind as guys that weren't talented, but my gosh, they had passion, they had a love for game, and they were about the team. If the Oilers scored when Ryan Smith was on the bench, he would be celebrating that goal just like he had scored it himself, right? Like he got it. He got it.
Well, and that's one of those things, I've been fortunate enough. I know Curtis Grankloss quite well, who that is, he made a career.
Great example.
Right? I mean, never was drafted, but these guys, they worked for it, they earned it, they had that understanding. And I think the major loss of connection that's happening right now is every parent wants their kid to be a Connor McDavid. The reality of it is you need to have 6 other guys or 8 other guys on your team that is the guy that can do everything well. Not just one thing, he's not the superstar. He's that guy that's a great locker room guy. He's a great bench guy. He gets out there, he works his butt off. If there's one thing that I was always taught is you'll never outdo effort.
Right.
If you're willing to put the time in and put the effort in, you can learn things.
Right.
I mean, it is something, and you can make yourself a very well-rounded hockey player. And that is the vast majority of our professional sports. We just have a spotlight placed on a few guys. But I mean, you can go through the decades and decades and bring up guys that, you won't know their names, but they'll have played 5-6 years in the NHL. And it's because that's what they did. They got to play in the show because they learned all the right aspects of the game, and they didn't just focus on one, right? And it came from an effort standpoint and being a good teammate and a good human being.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because you could have somebody that is, let's say you have 2 guys that are the exact same talent level, but you have somebody that's a good teammate, passionate, loves the game, or somebody that's a little bit of a dick. Right?
Oh, yeah.
He's not going to make the NHL, but the guy that has that positive attitude, I'm going to work hard, we're going to, those are the ones that are going to make it. But
you know what? Those are the people that succeed in life in general. And it isn't just around sports. Those people that go out there and are willing to put that time in and be that productive person and be a good team lead, a good team person. And, they have all of that. When you look at people in this world, those are the people that are successful, unless you're lucky enough to get handed $1 billion in generational money. All the people that I know in life are the people that put the time and effort in. And a lot of those things I do believe are instilled through sport, because it's the one place where you're part of a community that is working toward a common goal.
Yeah.
And you learn those life lessons there, and they are imprinted on you and they move forward. And if you're a dick and you're on your hockey team at U9 or U13, well, your hockey career is not going to go well. Chances are you're not going to change. And I'm going to say your professional career is not going to go all that well if you maintain a mentality like that, because nobody's going to want to work with you.
Right. Well, and there's so many different rabbit trails we could go down here as well.
God, yeah.
I saw like a Instagram reel just a couple days ago where basically coaches were saying, there's some kids that are talented, but they're not making this team because their parents as well. Right. And, if we could keep it at home and little Johnny comes home and he's crying, or little Sally's coming home because she's not getting fair play or whatever, it's just like, well, why don't you go talk to your coach and say, what do I need to do to get more ice time? Or what do I need to do to get more face-offs or whatever, right? As opposed to flipping around, we're mad at the coach, what he should be doing. No, let's address it straight on. And the coach, chances are, the coach is going to tell you what you need to do in order to get more ice time or more field time, accountability, whatever sport you are. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
it's accountability, right? And we've lost focus of that. And like you said, it's it's that way across our society, whether it's you're doing that to a teacher, whether you're doing that to a coach. It's no longer coming home and going, what could I do better? It's what could they do better? Right. And I mean, if that's, and it is, it's very, very true.
I
And I mean, that was
know.
one of the biggest lessons that I was taught is if I came home and you know what, if I had 2 breakaways and I missed both of those shots, I can improve my shooting.
Yeah.
That's got to get better. I can go out there and work on that. I can't blame my coach for not coaching me how to shoot better. You know, he can teach me a few things, but he's not going to sit there with me for an hour while the rest of the team's on the ice and do face-offs with me or have me shoot pucks at an offside corner. I need to understand that I'm accountable for my own development sometimes, and that it's not all on the coaches, and that you need to look at yourself before you start putting, blame on whoever else you think you can put the blame on, because that's what we do nowadays, right? It's never the parent's fault or the kid's fault that the kid failed the test.
Yeah.
And that's the sad reality of it is it's a looking for an outlet to put that in. And I do think a lot of the time it's because, in my personal opinion, the parents have failed in that aspect, and they haven't taught their kids that, and they realize that themselves sometimes, going, you know what, I could have done so much more. And so they get angry, and then that anger gets taken out somewhere else, and then it just becomes a vicious cycle. The kid learns that, and you know what? And it's true, because I mean, you've spent enough time in sports. That's what you see. The parents that are like that, the kids are like that. And I can guarantee you they're going to grow up and they're going to do the exact same thing. And, the parents that have the kids that, and they're like, hey, well, what can we do better?
Yeah.
Can I take you out to an outdoor rink? Can I take you to stick and puck? Can I take you to whatever? Like, let's go out and try and put some time and effort into this and get better, because that's what's needed.
Yeah. For sure.
There's that time there, and it's sacrifice on both parts. Obviously, parents have to be able to sacrifice some time, which I think I understand, jobs and things like that are not what our parents grew up with, just in the time commitment. But you want to create the best little human being you can as a parent.
Yeah.
And going out for playing catch for 20 minutes with your kid and teaching them how to, or with your daughter, teaching them how to throw maybe a better curveball or something like that, right? And just giving them those reps are massive, and we just omit it.
Yeah, we kind of overlook the importance of practice and the training and all those things, and we just focus so much in on the game and the game time and all that stuff. But in reality, it's the practice, it's the drills, it's the reps that you're getting in. That your kid's growing. The games are just kind of the showcase as to what's been going on in practice and training and all that stuff. So, Chris, you've left us with a lot to think about. I look forward to having you on again. Now you're officially a friend of the show if you've been on twice. So, but we look forward to having you on again as issues come up and things talk about, because you got your wealth of information, wealth of knowledge, and we look forward to having you on again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me again, Carlin. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Chris.